Are you ready? Ready to bring a revolution to your relationships? Ready for the experiences on your dating adventure to evolve? Ready for more passion, intimacy, connection, and love in your relationship? Ready to heal past relationship wounds? You're in the right place. I'm Alan, the love engineer, and this is the Relationship Revolutions podcast. In this series, you'll get guidance and tips from me, interviews from other relationship experts, insights from couples who already have a great relationship, and other mind-opening conversations. G'day and welcome to the latest episode of Relationship Revolutions, and this week my guest is the one and only Ian Bickle from Rewired Eating. Two questions to start with, Ian. How are you and where are you?
I am beautiful. Thank you for the warm introduction, Alan. I'm very good, thank you. Where am I? I am in the very always sunny northeast of England, in a little place between Durham and Newcastle. But I generally just say Newcastle for ease. We're all the same up here.
Yeah. To those of us who don't live in that area, the accent is very, very similar, but I'm sure once you get up there and been there for a while, then there's lots of different accents and dialects within that region.
Yeah, well, if you get a proper Geordie on here, then you'll know the difference. But to the majority of people, I just sound like something out of Geordie Shore, which for the listeners who may not be familiar with that show, just go and Google it, go YouTube it, and then you'll find out. And apologies in advance.
I think I'd rather not.
Yeah, don't. It's not representing the Northeast flag very well.
Yeah, I get the feeling if I got somebody on with a broad Geordie accent, then I wouldn't understand a word they were saying.
Yeah, and probably not really the greatest resource for relationships either, Geordie Shore. So, yeah, maybe we fit that in there somehow.
So I get the impression it's Newcastle's version of that Chelsea one that I'd never watched either.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was an American one called Jersey Shore, which was New York, well, Jersey, really. Yeah, so essentially the same. Lots of swearing and lots of love making. Let's just call it that.
Yeah. Shall we move on from this?
And, yes, I think so. I mean, we could we could keep it going for another 45 minutes if you want, talking about.
We could, but I think the people listening might be more interested in your story and how you came to be where you're at today.
Well, I like that segue there, Alan. Beautifully done. So as you said, Ian Bickle from Rewired Eating. Wow, my background, what a story. It's always involved food to a certain extent. Not funnily enough till I left school, not having a clue what I wanted to do. I tried IT because my mum said, that's not PlayStation and Nintendo, Mum. But I did try and do IT, dropped out very quickly. Didn't light a fire inside of me. At the time, I was working as a dishwasher, a pot washer. And then my mother suggested, well, why don't you do catering, Ian? I was like, well, it's something on my feet. And I went and qualified to be a chef and worked in the kitchens from the age of probably about 15 to nearly about 20, 21. I fell into what a lot of chefs fall into, which is heavy smoking and heavy alcohol use. I got to a stage where I was just tired of that life. I looked around at the chefs around me and saw the next 10, 20, 30 years of my life. I'd always had a keen interest of wrestling, talking Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, all of these things in my youth. But I was more into the kind of the Generation, Attitude Era, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Triple H, all of these. I just always looked at their physiques and thought, wow, that is amazing. I also grew up in the era of Terminator, Terminator 2, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Rambo, all of these. And I always had a fascination with bodybuilding. So I decided, hungover, stinking of cigarettes, to just go cold turkey on the cigarettes. And I quit smoking that day, and I haven't looked back since. That very day, I joined the gym. Little did I know, fast forward to now, like the power of making decisions. And to a certain extent, you have to get sick of being sick. And I hit that threshold. And I was just like, right. So I made a big statement, and a statement that reverberated into the rest of my life. I fell in love with fitness, fell in love with training. I fell in love with bodybuilding. Eventually, I went on, and this was the next big thing. I started doing my gym instructor course, qualified. There was some hours available at the leisure centre I was training in, and I was just given this option of like 6 months full-time work, but no guarantees after. I was stood in the kitchen peeling the millionth potato, and I just put me peeler down. Am I allowed to swear, Alan? I don't know.
Go for it.
And I just thought, fuck this, and I just took my apron off, and I was just done. And that is a metaphor. Are you finished? Are you sick and tired of peeling the last potato? You know, how many potatoes is it going to take until you just go, fuck this? So I just quit. I walked out. Again, big statement, and I just took this job. I mean, there's so much nuance going on, but I basically fell in love with bodybuilding and went down the road of natural bodybuilding. Always been natural, always will be natural. You know, listen, if people want to do what they want to do, that's fair enough. But for me, I just was more fearful of the side effects that performance enhancing drugs, and I just thought the cost benefits just aren't there. But getting into, you know, body image and food and nutrition can take you down one or two rabbit holes. Little did I know I become a bodybuilding wanker. So you can get sucked into a culture and you don't know you're in a culture. Now, I don't know if you're a fan of Mitchell and Webb, and it's hilarious sketch, but like basically they are in Nazi uniform, and one of them is going, you know, are we the baddies? We've got skulls as our logo. Like the realization is like, shit, is this the reality that I'm living in? And for me, bodybuilding was very much like that. There's a lot of BS going on in there. And what I've realized is this actually isn't an enjoyable life that I've got. You become so consumed with this culture, this diet culture, and I just thought, you know what, bodybuilding is something that I do. It's not who I am. So I became a little bit more aware of like the behaviors and the impact that it had on those around me. Now, there's so many things going on, particularly in social media and media in general, of like body image issues and the valuation and often overvaluation people have on looking a certain way. So I was working. I eventually started working as a personal trainer. I opened a gym with my ex-business partner. I started working more and more with people on their nutrition. Primarily in the beginning, it was like weight management focused, like fat loss and things like that. But it just gave us the ick, Alan. I just wasn't happy. I was just like, yeah, people are getting these surface level results by like modifying their what I call surface level stuff, the X's and O's of nutrition, and we manage energy balance and blah, blah, blah. But for me, I still didn't feel like it was truly the right thing. Yeah, there was these physical things, but the clients that really changed was the ones that had this internal shift.
Yeah.
And I became more and more interested, intrigued with the behavioral side of change. So my vehicle is food. And I know so many people with disorder. Well, I've helped so many people, and there's so many people out there. And it's hard for people not to have disordered relationships with food. Now, I'm going to refer it to disordered eating rather than eating disorders. Because eating disorders, these need clinically to be kind of like they need to meet a clinical criteria to be diagnosed with an eating disorder. But disordered eating can be on a spectrum. And I would say I work with people towards the kind of the more extreme end, people that are lost in diet culture, body image issues, binge emotional eating, chronically yo-yo dieting, secret eating, avoiding social situations, which ultimately is going to get in their everyday relationships, never mind like an intimate relationship. So what I help people do is become free around food. So it's not something they have to manage. Yes, of course, they're going to eat because food is something that we're going to interact with several times per day. So for me, helping people make peace with it is huge. And often my clients, they have done every diet. They'll often say it to me, Ian, I've tried everything. Nothing works for me. Even creating beliefs around themselves, like it's my metabolism broken or so on and so forth. So what we have to do...
It's just my age.
Yeah, it's I'm too
It's the
old for
menopause.
this. Menopause. And obviously these are legitimate things that obviously are, and I'm not dismissing those sort of things. I'm hugely respectful of the person who's sat in front of me. So this is why my focus is helping them primarily with their relationship with food. And then we can start changing the narrative around those sorts of things. And as you know, those who say they can and those that say they can't are usually both right. So what we have to do is, and this is where rewired eating comes in, is the rewiring is like changing people's belief systems and interpretations and perceptions. And obviously food and the eating aspect of it is reconnecting ourselves to food, our values, because food is amazing. I used to work as a chef, so I've enjoyed food, and there was a big part of my adult life, especially when bodybuilding, when food became #fuel, and it was clean eating or it was tracking calories meticulously and all of this sort of thing. So there was a real disconnect from food. Now this is the problem: is people, they love food, and this ambivalence around eating because they love food, but they also see food as the enemy. So how do we get into that middle ground where people actually start to enjoy their nutrition, their food? Because the way I see it, your nutrition, your diet is something that you've got to have for the rest of your life. So for me, instead of treating it like a mini campaign like most diets do, or eliminating, it's about inclusion, and it's about, and I liken it like learning to drive. Okay, once you learn to drive, you know how to drive. So you can go pretty much anywhere in the world and you can still understand the principles. Even if you're driving on the other side of the road, even if there isn't roundabouts, even if you still fundamentally have the neural pathways in there and the baseline philosophies of knowing how to drive. So I just kind of put that in food, and that's my tangent.
Excellent. So I see and hear on a lot of podcasts and various different sources and social media how there's almost three approaches to healthy eating, if you like, without going down the Weight Watchers rabbit holes and all that, and Slim Fast and all that kind of thing. So on one side you've got to be vegan. The other side is you've got to be the carnivore, and then there's those in the middle that say you've got to have a balanced diet. What's the truth?
There's always a lot of social commentary, and there's a certain degree of virtue and morality attached to what people are eating. A lot of the people I help, they're worried about like the spotlight being on them and the prodding and probing that goes around certain like kind of eating behaviors. So there is no right answer, but generally, if your nutrition is super skewed in one direction or the other, then it could be problematic. Now, for example, vegans, if it's done for like ethical reasons, rather than health reasons, because You know, there's a reason why we're omnivorous, right? We're meant to extract nutrients from both plant and animal products. But we obviously live in a culture now where we are so advanced, we can supplement quite heavily. But it's when people are beating a dead horse. So the vegan, the malnourished, it's very much like a process of elimination. And if there is a dieting agenda there, because like I always say to people, I'm not bothered. Like if people are happy and it's not getting in the way of their life and they're just getting on with it, crack on. And if you are genuinely healthy, both psychologically, emotionally, and physically, and biologically, and all of that, because we've got to look at health as a whole, not just #health. And that word, I think, is just a bullshit word. Like nobody even understands the interpretation of health. People say, "Oh, is that healthy?" I'll just say, "Well, define healthy." The kind of, you know what I mean? Because like you're talking about blood markers, like, and what happens acutely doesn't necessarily pan out chronically. So if I told you, "Oh, we do this thing that like elevates heart rate and like creates inflammation," people are like, "Oh my God." It's like, yeah, that's what exercise does. But we all know fundamentally exercise is a healthy thing to do. So it's always in the person's hands that we need. And this is where disordered eating comes in. Is there a preoccupation there? Or is it having a negative impact on yourself and those around you? You know, as I said earlier, are you avoiding social situations? Like, do you have feelings of anxiety around food? Is there like a body image preoccupation there? Are you overly worried about, and this is the power of social media, is it can create problems.
Yeah.
And obviously they've got the solution to those problems as well. It's like Apple, you know what I mean? And that's the thing. It's like if somebody is good looking, in good shape, funny, that is often seen as a large enough qualification for people to buy in. So there needs to be a little bit of a better kind of way for people to, or a much more kind of a responsibility there in people for them to kind of do their homework on people. Is this just another guru? Is this someone who is just peddling a message based off their experiences? What qualifications do they have? Are they evidence-based? The likelihood is not. So these people who are not just trying to sell something, but also they're basically shitting on everything else. Well, for me, I just think it's losing, it's missing the forest for the trees. And as I've said, like, yes, we focus on like food and nutrition, absolutely. But we primarily focus on the individual and help them get what they want from their diet, not just from a nutrient standpoint, but also from like a more holistic one. Like, what does it give them in their life? Because as I said, food is amazing. Food brings people together. Food connects us. So it's so important that having a positive relationship with it is going to give you like a far easier life in the long run, I feel.
Yeah, most definitely. And I was thinking back to some of the times when I was probably drinking more than I should have done, and I didn't want to go to a pub or go out for the night because I didn't want somebody to offer me a drink. Because it's hard to say no sometimes, unless you're driving, in which case you can say, no, I'm driving. Everybody gets that. Everyone respects it. But very few people say, oh, you're not driving, but you're not drinking either? Or what's going on?
Yeah, I think, and I would always say, like, often when I'm working with people, it's quite frankly an identity thing, because you don't just change one thing, right? It reverberates around your social circle. So you are a social drinker and all your friends are social drinkers. And like that is, and there's a big thing in NLP called like secondary gain.
Yeah.
So people are getting something, even though the behavior it's got its costs, it's got its benefits. So like, yeah, like that maybe drinking to excess isn't particularly healthy, but also that's where your crack is. That's where your social circle is. That's and you may associate it with like unwinding and like reducing stress and happiness and joy. And this is obviously with food a huge thing, because if people, for example, have developed like binge eating, you know what, it becomes like this compulsive behavior that almost feels foreign not to do. An irony is when people, where focus goes, energy flows. So what a lot of people try and do is not binge eat. Try not to binge eat. So and we're not even talking about it, Alan, if I tell you not to think of a black cat, whoa, what?
Automatically happens.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Like, and people are like, there's cats everywhere. Don't think of those cats. Stop thinking of black cats, Alan. And the listeners, oh my God, I'm trying not to think of a black cat. So try not to think of something, try not to do something generally moves you towards that thing. So when it comes to like, obviously how we channel our energy is hugely important. So when it comes to not drinking, if you're trying not to drink, all you're going to be thinking of, and then eventually, willpower will give in. Like something will tip you over the edge. This is actually, what are we going to focus on? This is where we channel our energy. The thing is, it has nothing to do with black cats. It has nothing. All of a sudden, you're just not drinking. You're just not binging. You're just not thinking of black cats. And it's almost like, whoa, where did this come from? I'm not even trying, which is amazing. And this is what I think it should be all about. Like, this should be effortless, because what we do is make it part of who you are.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of crossover between what you do with people with their relationship with food and what I do with the person's relationship with their significant other, or whatever label they want to give. But it all comes back to the relationship that we have with ourselves, because we take ourselves everywhere we go.
Absolutely. You know what? You cannot get into an intimate relationship with people, humans who have had lived experiences, who ultimately, for whatever reason, have ended up in front of ourselves. So it's like kind of giving them ability to express and process their journey. And this is, I think, the art of coaching, is like, at the end of the day, I always, like, my little saying is, food is easy, it's people that are complicated. And I don't know what's happened from that person's day of birth to now, because as soon as we're born, we're trying to understand the world that we live in. And a lot of people have been brought up by others that have lived in diet culture. A lot of my clients have been taken to slimming groups as children. Maybe not to participate, usually not, but they're there with mom who's doing a weekly weigh-in. But then the culture, the chat, the crack, and all of this sort of stuff. If people have been brought up in, abusive relationships and have had problems with parents and things like that, and they've got a warped perception of relationships, then it's maybe up to us to kind of like get them to see things just a little bit differently, to reconnect, to gain a different perspective, so that ultimately they have a more balanced approach to it. Like, all men are dicks, all women are bitches. Like, food's the problem. Is it? Or are you, I'm not saying this, like, are you the problem? Is it just maybe your filtration system in your brain is trying to find red flags, because that's what your brain does. It's a survival machine, and it's going to try and protect you any way it can. And if you've walked down an alley and you get beaten up, all right, you not really want to go down that alley again. But also, every alley you go down in the future, your brain is going back to this little filing system that it's got from the unconscious to the conscious, and it's just going, right, danger. So we're trying in many ways to protect ourselves. Binging, it has its purpose. It may not be a logical purpose, but this is the unconscious mind. This is the old brain we're talking about. And this has been around for hundreds of millions of years. It doesn't work on logic. It works on survival. It works to keep us alive. So in many ways, binge eating becomes a bit of a survival response. It's serving you. It's protecting you in some sort of way. You're using it to cope, to change state. And when I was heavily drinking, alcohol was my go-to. But I changed. Like, my attention went somewhere totally different. And in many ways, bodybuilding and training was that vehicle. But in reflection, like, whilst I'm grateful of that, I believe that it could have been anything. It could have been anything completely. And that's why I think, like, working with people, you're allowed to figure out what they want. They know what they don't want. They don't want to see the black cats. They don't want to be in horrible relationships.
Yeah.
Like, you're saying what you don't want, and guess what's still coming towards you? And then you're like, I knew it. It's like, well, what are you trying to, what energy you bring into this?
Yeah, so often we point that finger of blame at the society, culture, him, her, whatever it may be, and we don't always look in the mirror, because looking in the mirror is often quite painful. And it means we have to change.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously this is why I think change is so challenging, because ultimately I think people need to hit a threshold like I did, and like I do numerous times. And when you feel something is off kilter, your intuition does not lie. It knows. You can feel this. And in a relationship, people will stick in relationships for way too long, because in many ways the fear of change outweighs the fear of staying the same. And it's only until that threshold kind of takes over, and then it's like, that's when you quit the job. That's when you leave the relationship, and you're like, I don't fucking care. Like, I'm willing to take this. But humans have this amazing capacity for strength and survival.
Yeah.
And it's like, you will survive. You just have to. And it is kind of like figuring it out as we go. What do diets offer? All right. Diets offer predictability. They offer security. What do we want as a human? We want predictability and security. So people are willing to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. Whereas actually what I do with people is going, hey, yeah, like, I'm an intuitive eating counselor, I've done NLP and things like that. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know right now if there's an asteroid heading to Earth going to obliterate us in the next 5 minutes. I don't know. Now, I'm pretty sure it's not going to happen. Probably would have heard about it. But we get into cycles. A lot of people's lives are fairly repeatable. There's a lot of repetition there. Said that many times, the irony. What we don't like is different. When you go to the supermarket, where do you park? Probably the same bay, if not in the same area. You go to the toilet at maybe the restaurant you always go to the same cubicle. Why is that? We like predictability. I'll have a look at the takeaway menu. I'm just going to get what I always get, because we know that's the same. Yeah, I'll have a look at the menu, scan it for, I'll just get that. But like, we like predictability, and yeah, it's fine until it's not fine. So it's the same in relationships. Relationships become stale. It's like, what was it like when you first got together? And like, I'm not saying that it has to be like that, but I think life is for living, and I genuinely believe, like, your diet, you should enjoy it as a whole, and you can be physically healthy, but people associate healthy with thinness, and that's often a big problem. What is it? Kate Moss said, nothing tastes better than skinny feels. We can just look at it as a cultural whole. Like, even the fat phobic nature that we live in, the weight stigma that people get. So people are trying to diet themselves into a smaller body because they perceive that they will get more opportunities. They will, and we can look at how much they're glorified on social media in general.
Yeah.
And people make it like, unfortunately, their identity. And all of a sudden, when your identity is tied with it, it can be very dangerous because you should be doing this, but really that's not who you are. So a big part of my service is helping people figure out who they are.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of this cultural stigma around body shape and things like that goes back to that monkey mind and thousands of years ago when we lived in caves and whatnot, where for a woman to survive, she would need a guy that is strong, muscular, that can protect her and provide for her. And that unconscious is still lurking in there. And it's the same with men. When we were back in those cave days, we'd want a woman that was healthy and in a fit state to provide children. That is still lurking in the unconscious. And now when we look at body shapes and things today, you hear podcasts all the time saying women are attracted to guys who are 6 foot tall with a six pack and a 6-figure income, which goes back to protecting and providing. Doesn't mean he's emotionally available or anything like that or healthy to be in a relationship with. But unconsciously, that is still there. Except for some of us who have had some challenging relationships and done that inner work and moved past that, then our approach to relationships completely changes.
Yeah, I think, you know what, like people, it's kind of like, a millionaire saying, oh, money isn't everything. It's kind of almost like they've had to do all of the shit work, the sleepless nights, the loss of their family, and like the sacrifice to achieve this thing. And when they get there, they're like, ugh, you know what?
Everything.
Like, yeah, they realize. And even from a body image perspective, I've been on stage, competed, all of this sort of stuff. Like, you know what? I've had what is culturally considered to being in shape. Like I'll say that because, like, quite frankly, I don't give a shit because that's not my worth. Like, my weight is not my worth, my physical appearance, because I offer the world so much more. I don't use my body as my business card. Like, I just think, like, that's not the message I want to send out there. So, like, I can say, like, being in that sort of shape, yeah, like, you get like compliments, oh my God, and you get this adulation, but at the end of the day, when all of that's gone, it's just you. And it's like, right, okay then. And now I'm trying to keep up this pretense as well because people, this is what a lot of influencers do. Essentially, they are broadcasting their body image issues, their eating disorder, because they're getting validated for it. They're getting likes, they're getting followers, they're getting money. People are buying into their program, these unqualified people with disordered eating. And you know what? And that's the thing, is like getting into the wrong culture can be super harmful. And you can look at someone like myself, and I want you to look beyond the physical stuff. I've got 2 beautiful kids. I've got a wife. I've got hobbies. I like to go out and eat. I enjoy food. And I eat what I want with freedom, with no guilt or anxiety. Don't have to work it off or burn it off. All little dots that are connecting. And it's the ecosystem of my diet, which is based on the values that I have and the things that I care about. And that's really what we're going to be looking back on our deathbed at. Isn't how much millions we got in the bank or how our abs looked. It's actually like the experiences that we had.
Yeah. Did I enjoy that moment? So, how long have you been married now?
Oh God, wow. Hope the wife's not listening to this. It's been coming up 5 years.
How did you guys meet? The reason I ask that is I get asked all the time, where do I meet this ideal person? So how and where did you meet?
So this was a big shift for me, and it ties in nicely to this whole thing. So I'm divorced, all right. Didn't work out. A lot of that had to do probably with my change, my transformation in identity. Went from drinking heavily and all of this casual gym user to heavy gym user, like bodybuilding. That's my life. And it doesn't leave much else. All right. Let's be honest, I don't believe that was a catalyst and that just fast tracked the breakdown of that relationship. But that relationship was never meant to last. And another thing, everything happens for a reason. Without that, I wouldn't have this. Yeah. So I'm grateful for that time. And a lot of the clients I work with who struggle with eating disorder, binge eating, eventually that becomes their superpower, because it's like, wow, I have this newfound love and respect for this freedom, the ability to choose. And that's amazing. I was 2014, I was dieting for my natural bodybuilding competition, made a huge thing out of it. And about 4 weeks before the show, maybe 6 weeks, somewhere within that region, I met my now wife. So I was working at the gym. We just got talking. We clicked. We went for a date, bowling. It was just electric. Absolutely amazing. And the amazing thing is, it came out of nowhere. I wasn't forcing it. Like, my attention was fully on bodybuilding. And this woman took my eyes away from it. And she's a big catalyst to why, like, actually I care more about, like, helping people have a life where, yes, health and fitness, because I still train, I still lift weights, I still eat what's considered healthy, but it comes from this totally different energy. Like, it's not disordered. And a big part of that is my wife, who we love food. We love going out. We love experiencing food. We love sticky toffee pudding. Ever go out, get a dessert, sticky toffee pudding. And that's a thing. It's just like, when I was competing, there was a big shift I'd got with my girlfriend then, who I was like head over heels with. Now, for those that don't know what the effects of competing does to physiology, women, you lose your periods, hair starts to thin, especially if you do it too long over time. Your heart rate will drop, you'll feel tired, you'll be super food focused. Guys, you'll lose your libido, you'll not be able to get an erection. Now, this is not a great thing when you're in a new relationship, right? So I don't know how much you talk about the intimacy side of things, Alan, but like, essentially, when you're in a new relationship, but this was really good for me, because like, that relationship was not about sex, because it couldn't be. So we had that phase where, yes, I dieted further, competed, won. Then I had to do what's called like the recovery process. So nobody considers the diet after the diet, especially an extreme diet, because usually most people's after the diet is rebound eating and binge eating and regaining of weight, if not more. So you don't just eat more and it's all fixed. You got several months of metabolic adaptations that have occurred. When you're dieting, your brain works totally different. Like, if you want to know more about this, just Google Minnesota starvation study, and that'll show you what happens to when people are starved chronically. Semi-starvation as well. But when people lose significant amounts of body fat, people go batshit crazy, because food is essential for survival, and people are putting themselves into this starved state willingly because hashtag they want to look better, you know. So for me, the recovery of that and regaining body fat, because body fat is healthy. Yep, I know. And like, getting your biological and physiological things working properly, cognitive function, libido, women, getting your period back, hair, nails, skin, like all of these sorts of things, like is super important. So within the relationship with my wife, and there was like a thing with bodybuilding where like really like disconnected me from it. When you do a natural show and you win, you have to provide a urinalysis test. Well, test A came back inconclusive, which by definition is a fail. But like everybody hears that. They don't hear that. It came back inconclusive. They're going to do test B, which costs a few £100. Let's wait before, you send us to the galley. And a lot of people did. It was like a witch hunt. And that really just jarred me out at bodybuilding as a whole. Test B came back and I was fine, clear. But that's not what people hear. Oh, there must have been something. And it's like, whoa, bloody hell. Like, it's said black and white that I'm fine. So that really, for me, and I ended up just kind of like really falling out of love with bodybuilding. But it's the best thing that ever happened to me, because I was just like, then who am I? Who the hell am I outside of bodybuilding? Because we all want purpose, don't we? So you are not just like, a coach. Because when your identity becomes too entangled with something, if that's taken away, then who are you?
Yeah.
Bodybuilding in many ways was taken away from me. And I went through this real big crisis. And luckily, my wife was there to help me like figure out who I am. And this is really what I'm about, as I'm helping people be who they want to be, or who they can't see themselves being capable of being. Like, I've been called a life coach. And I don't mind that, because very quickly the food shit just becomes easy.
Yeah.
And I think it should be. So yeah, there's a little summary of how we got together.
Excellent. So one of the things I heard from that is we all see these pictures online and videos of these guys that have, and some women too, that are fully muscular, and is to have that physique all the time can't be very healthy.
Listen, there is a subset of people who genetically they have been given something. There's only one Usain Bolt. There's only one Michael Jordan, one Lionel Messi, one, actually, well, Venus and Serena Williams. Okay, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, we'll give that. They are two separate people, but they are like the 1% of the 1%. When people are getting, genetics plays a huge role in this, but genetics plays a huge role in what's called like body fat set point. So where your body just likes to be naturally. So I can tell you now, if I lose weight, if I purposely lose weight, I will naturally just gravitate to where I am. So I am super happy with where I am. All right. And that's fine. I'm not better or any. Usually people who are trying to purposely diet, they end up like rebounding the other way, because the body's trying to battle for homeostasis. And it goes back to, as you mentioned, caveman days. Like, they didn't have the pressures of Instagram and social media and things like that. They didn't care what, like, the caveman in the next cave thought about how they were wearing their cavemen outfits. I've just got Flintstones in my head. I'm sure it wasn't like that. But listen, like, we look at these people, and yeah, a subset of people can do that. And these are usually the people who have got millions of followers, who are building a brand off that, who, have the blue tick. And that just does not necessarily mean there's also, we don't know. We only see what was shown, right? So a lot of people have disordered eating. A lot of people are taking performance enhancing drugs, and performance enhancing drugs, there is so many things that do different things these days. A lot of the guys, and again, there's body image issues, there's body dysmorphia, there is orthorexia, so guys who are obsessed with being bigger. I went through a stage of this. You're comparing yourself to everybody else's muscles around you, and you're looking at their arms, and even if they're not bigger than yours, and this is body image body image, it's subjective. So somebody could be in technically fantastic shape and have huge body image problems. Somebody could be in what's considered not good shape and not give a shit. And that's fine, you know, but as a society, we're like, well, you should give a shit. That can't be healthy. And, well, you look at these people and, yeah, like, what you don't know is maybe they got all of these photos taken when they got shredded, because you can really maintain that for a week. So if I get like thousands of pictures done in different locations, that's like maybe 2-3 years worth of content. You don't know if I'm in the background crying into a bowl of ice cream and like fell out of love with training, or like I've lost my period, or I've got a full-blown eating disorder. That's the problem. And we can't always look at, so I don't even compliment weight loss. So I see someone's lost a significant amount of weight, I'll ask them if they're all right. I don't know if they've got cancer. I don't know if they've got an eating disorder. Like, you just don't know. But it's almost like a cultural norm. Oh, have you lost? You're looking fantastic. And then that's like, oh, I feel good. And that can be where it starts. What was just an innocent little seedling, they get to me and it's a big fuck off oak. And I'm like, right, we've got some work to do here, because internally your brain, the way it's wired, is based off the perceptions of the things that you think you value when you actually don't, or the things you think you should be valuing, what you believe around food, what you don't believe. So I try and not only impart wisdom and knowledge, but a big part of what I do is just helping people change and being a vehicle to allow them to do that, and be more of a facilitator of change rather than just another diet. Do this, don't do that. Like, Google that shit. That's not what you need. I believe you need choice, autonomy, and freedom as a human, and that extends into the food that you eat.
Yeah, definitely. And certainly the mind plays such a powerful role in anything and everything we do. When I start working with people, looking back at their relationship history, and there are common denominators with everyone they've dated, and then when you get to the point where they've found the relationship that they want to be in, that they feel comfortable in, that they can actually be themselves in, and the person they're in this relationship with is a totally different person to what they've attracted previously, because they've got a better awareness of who they are and what they're all about, rather than what the conditioning says they should be attracted to.
Yeah, and I think that's the beautiful thing about like the art of coaching, because I think that term coach, like the label coaching, anybody can use it, but like actually being coached is very different than to be like given somebody else's blueprint for success. Like for me, it's a lot. Like, for example, I've got frameworks, of course, but like we learn to meander away from that. Anybody who starts with me, I'm going to go, right, I'm going to give you some stuff between our, say, initial like onboarding call and our first consultation. You're going to go in, primarily my clients are women, and I do like to have fun. I'm going to go like, you're going to go away, you're going to read this, watch that, and you're going to shit your knickers. And they'll laugh, and I'm like, no, you will. I goes, because what you're going to do is you're going to carry your dieting mentality into a non-dieting approach. And this is a huge part of the change. It's like, we'll learn, you're going to get the feelings. The feelings are the feelings. They're there, all right? And it's being able to understand them and feel them. We're not trying to avoid them. We're actually we're going to let them in. So like any experiences that people have had, whether it's with food and diets, or whether it's with people, they're going to carry into the next thing. And in many ways, you do have to be willing to be vulnerable. You got to be willing for it to not work. And the irony is, usually it works, because you are putting yourself into this situation. And ultimately, you are trusting the process. Everybody wants everything written on a bit of paper and told what to do, when to do it, how to do it. And that's just not real life. We've got business coaches who have, they're going to get you 10K a month. We got the diet coaches who are going to get X amount of weight off you in X amount of weeks. And it's like, but to what cost? So I could put somebody on a restrictive diet. So, like, you get get a nice side-by-side photo, but at what cost? Like, what you go away from that, you haven't learned anything about yourself, you haven't learned anything about food. There you go, there's your eating disorder. There's your disordered eating. See you later. I'm not willing to do that.
Repeat the same old patterns.
Yeah, and those, like, you have to be willing. And listen, I get coached, I've went through therapy, all of these sorts of things. I can't be a coach and not value coaching. This is a tough life. But you know what? Like, it can be made so much easier when you've got a different perspective. So when you've got that shift in perspective, you can be like, actually, relationships are fantastic, bad experiences. But that's what makes this next one even better, because I know who I am now and I know what I want. And I've got boundaries now. Like, and it's the same with food. People say shit about my food. I don't mind telling them to, like, politely do one. Fuck off. Like, if I was to prod and probe them, it's rude. So it's just let people be, because ultimately we are trying to draw comparison, these social comparisons, because, like, it's like relationships. Like, they've got a better relationship than ours, and it's like, what? Because you've seen what they've shown.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't know if there's, like, some sort of abuse going on in the house as soon as the door's shut. Or they hate each other, they don't even sleep in the same room. But they've just got this amazing display. They've got the kids, they've got the house, they go on the holidays, they've got the money. Secretly, they hate each other. And that, for me, is like the disordered relationship with food. Like, they look lean, they've got muscles. But then everything's meticulously tracked on an app. They can't go out to eat. They've got to know the calories and macros, or they eat squeaky clean. And I was like, what is the foundational relationship there?
Yeah, I'd rather enjoy life.
But I think we've all had to walk this. We've had to go through our journey to get to the other side. And sometimes I want to represent that light for the clients who need someone like my help. Because often other diets and even other coaches are just pushing more of the same stuff. It's just perpetuating the cycle. So I want to like Lord of the Rings, like, reference. I want to break the wheel. And that's why I think, like, I always say, it's up to the person, it's up to the client. You're going to come to work with me, and this has to be the last time you do this. Yeah, of course it costs money. It's an investment. But you're investing in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Take a look back at the past 10, 20, 30, 40 years, or however long it's been. We know the repetitive nature of our habits and behaviours. Do you want more of the same? The answer is no. Then that's the leap of faith. That's the potato reference. We're bringing it back. We're going full circle. Are you sick of peeling your last tatty? So you need to put the peeler down and the potato, because that's usually in the other hand. And you go, fuck this. I'm not peeling no more tatties. And that's where the magic happens, really.
Yeah. That point of no return doesn't really matter what area of life it is. One of the guys I know over in the States, I'm hoping to get on here at some point in the future, he spent some time in jail. He grew up in a cult, and when he came out of jail, all of his stuff had been nicked by a so-called friend. So he spoke to some other mates of his, and they were going to go around and see him with gun in hand. And he's like, hang on a minute, this is premeditated murder. I can't do this. I don't know what's on the other side. But this road must stop here. And from there, he completely transformed his life. But I think sometimes we have to hit that springboard or that rock bottom to get to that point where it's painful enough for us to actually get through to ourselves and stop getting on our own way.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, some would say he had his potato peeling moment, and that's the thing. It's like it has to happen. Like, I'm going to make that a thing, by the way, Alan.
I mean, I might even call this episode "Have you peeled your last potato?"
Well, there you go. It'll create a lot of intrigue. But that's the thing. You know what? I don't like this podcast. We haven't really talked about food, like what makes a healthy diet, blah blah. And I'm like, listen, you're not stupid.
Because everyone's different.
Yeah, everyone is different. But to be fair, the basics are the basics for a reason. Like, everyone's different, but to a certain extent, biologically, we're very similar. All right. There is subtle cases, of like if people have celiac or certain sensitivities. But the reality is, if that is the case, you need to be speaking to like a registered dietitian. So for things of that nature, because I'm here to help people with their relationship with food and get like a strong baseline. Anything, it's probably like similar to yourself. As somebody's got like deep trauma, they may have to do what they're doing with you alongside like some therapy, because like you're like, if they've been, for example, molested, sorry if this is triggering to anyone, but if they've went through child abuse or rape or something like that, sometimes having that, and there's me like, have you tried some vegetables? Like that would, it's just like, whoa, like I hear you, I understand you, like I'm here for you as a human. But this, and I've worked with people who went to work with me alongside counseling and therapy, which I refer to people who I know in my network. And it's quite common amongst coaches, because we are fixers. We want to help people. But the reality is, the best help we can do is putting them in front of the right person.
Yeah.
And I'll say sometimes with people who I think it's not the right time, I'll say, I think you need to go away and maybe get these ducks in a row before we focus on this duck. And that's just me being honest, because ultimately, if it isn't the right time, if they can't focus on this, then it's not going to have the desired effect, and it'll probably be more harmful than beneficial.
Yeah.
Because I want to help everybody doesn't mean I can help everybody. And maybe, like we do these podcasts, it's allowing people to get to know me. They might come to my podcast, the Rewired Eating podcast, which is available on Apple and Spotify.
And there'll be a link in the show notes as well.
There you go. Plug. But they might go along and they might absorb, and they might go, oh, actually, this Ian Bickle, I'm aligned with him. I like his crack. I like his Geordie-ish accent. I like his weird potato references. You know what? I reckon we could have a relationship. And that's what coaching is.
Yeah.
Like, if it's like a relationship in real life, you don't have to have that person just because they're there. So you don't have to work with me or Alan just because we're here. I want to make sure I get on with you. You want to make sure you get on with me. And then we take this relationship at the pace that it needs to go in. Ultimately, it is about starting. But once we start, I don't know where it could go. I don't know what aha moments you might get. And that is part of the process of like taking that leap of faith and going, you know what? I know what I'm doing just isn't working. I need to take an alternative take on this. And that's what I believe I can offer.
Beautiful. I do wonder how much of the challenges we have with the relationship to food and comfort eating, binge eating, whatever it may be, comes from either not respecting ourselves or not loving ourselves.
Yeah, why are people using food? You know what? That is such a challenging thing for a lot of people when we are approaching this quite sensitive topic.
Yeah.
So primarily, like, I'm looking like, are we honouring our biological hunger? Like, and then it's kind of looking at coping with the emotions and what we're using food for and what was food giving us once upon a time. Because as I said, food, it has a physiological impact, it has a psychological and emotional impact. And neurons that fire together, Alan, they wire together.
They do indeed.
They do. How many times you said that? Many?
I've no idea.
Well, there you go. So we build associations, and nothing's stronger than an emotional feeling. And then if we couple that with, say, an eating experience, boom, stress, boredom, anxiety. How many times people find themselves scrolling on the phone when they're meant to be doing tasks?
Too many.
Yeah. And that because and then we've created a neural pathway, and then all of a sudden, like, you're looking for your phone, you even pick it up, and it's like, shit, that's in my hand. What's going on? Yeah. And it's the same with food in many ways. Like, you create this strong neural pathway, and this is where Rewired comes in. So in many ways, I'm like, you can learn all the best. You can have, on paper, a very healthy diet. You can change your physical being, but fundamentally, programmed is you, and you're always trying. I was like, I want to make this effortless. You're not managing binge eating. Binge eating isn't even in the equation anymore. It's not part of your identity. So, like, coping with your emotions in kind of ways. Don't necessarily have to relive experiences. We have to rewire. So if we keep going back and reliving, we could be just strengthening the neural connection. People sometimes go to, like, counseling and therapy, and they feel like they've been beat to shit because they've just went through, like, further amounts of trauma, and they've relived the experience that they're trying to move forward from. So we got to, in many ways with this, I'm like, we move forward. We have what I call, like, towards language. The away froms is not thinking of the black cat. That's away language. Towards language is, what do we want? Not what we don't want. What do we want?
Yeah.
So it's about, so, like, when it comes to helping people, 9 times out of 10, especially with females, there's still a dieting agenda there. Like, that is a huge contributor to the binge eating, under eating, and restriction. We have biological restriction, so you're not giving yourself enough food and calories and things like that. But then we got emotional restriction, mental restriction. Goods, the bads, the rights, the wrongs, the healthy, the unhealthy. So we have to kind of, like, this is like an N equals 1. That's why I like working one-to-one with people, because I'm exclusively in their world and working with their language and their perceptions, so we can shift those things.
Yeah. I think with stuff, with the things that you do and things that I do, it's so much of it has got to be one-on-one because it's so nuanced. Whereas if you had a group coaching program, you could do the surface stuff, but you're not going to get down into the depth where the changes really need to happen.
Yeah, like, I think space is so important for the client to process. Like, giving them, and there's something called the writer's reflex amongst coaches particularly, and they want to give the client's answer. They want to tell them what to do rather than letting them. And, like, when clients come to me and they've had, like, you know, once upon a time they would frame it as I've had a terrible week, and I rub my hands together. Like, brilliant. So I reframe that moment, because that is the ingredients that is so necessary for change. Like, if they were fine, they wouldn't be working with me. So sometimes, like, they want to kind of show this at the beginning, like this, oh, teacher's pet, look at me, look how healthy my eating is. I'm like, this is bullshit. This isn't real. So, like, I don't want people to approach what I'm doing like another diet. Can't. So I'm like, when people start working, it's like, no Last Supper eating. Or what do you mean? It's like, you know how maybe we're starting next week and you're going to maybe start on Monday by default. So you're going to eat all the food over the weekend. None of that. If you're going to get a takeaway on Friday, get one. People are like, oh, So I think like what we're trying to do is completely just change the overall narrative. So I liken it to like the Matrix. Is like when you actually awaken to it, you're like, oh, like wow, is that what really is? And that's what diet culture is. It's so ingrained. So ingrained. But once you realize it, start seeing it, that reticular activating system. You start seeing everything now. The labels on food, the magazines, the Instagram. And it's just like, wow, I like you've just totally changed the way I see things. So yeah, it's like that's I think one of the greatest things is you actually give somebody something real that is exclusively theirs that nobody can touch, nobody can feel. That's the beauty of intuitive eating for me. That word intuition. Intuition is you've got intuition, I've got intuition, and yet my intuition is based off many factors, which include my values. So when I'm working with clients, that's what I'm working with. I'm working with them. And intuition is something that we had. And that's often just been lost through whatever bullshit, often diets, whether it's in the name of wellness, which is another culture, like another bullshit culture. Like people are doing all sorts of shit in the pursuit of wellness. And it's just like, is it? Like, you're trying to be all of these things. Why can't you just be?
Yeah. Yes, being yourself is a great thing that I hear here, there, and everywhere. But before you can be yourself, you've got to truly know yourself.
Yeah.
And that's something that's severely overlooked.
Yeah, I think I'm from the northeast of England, and we grew up in a culture, and that ultimately that is who I am. But if I was born somewhere else in riches, my experiences around, say, money, around food, would have been completely different, and that would have shaped my reality. So reality is just like your perception of how the world is. So you can, and that's the big thing about change. Actually, and that's what bodybuilding gave me, because when I left school with pretty much nothing. 4 C grades. My two
Same
older
here.
brothers. Yeah, woo! To the C's. My older brothers, 2 older brothers, I was the third of 3 boys. They went to a private school in Newcastle. They wore blazers. Blazers, Alan. That's how serious it was. I got shipped to the local comp just because I wasn't academically there. But I grew up believing that I was the inferior one. What bodybuilding unlocked in me was the ability, the capacity to go, you know what, I can. It wasn't bodybuilding. It was the act of doing something that was like hard work and exclusively mine. Running a business. And you know what? There's lots of frustrations. There's lots of times where you're like, what's the fucking point? Like, am I just banging my head against the wall? Same way. But the reality is that is part of the journey. That is part of the story. That persistence, that pursuit. I congratulate my clients. I'm like, you know what? You've been trying for so long. Well done. For keep going, and now you're here. Now you're going to get some proper help. Amazing. And it becomes such an amazing thing. And you like I said earlier, you're grateful of the shit you've went through, because without the shit you've went through, you wouldn't be who you are.
Yeah.
So I'm so grateful for my upbringing. I'm so grateful that I struggled at school, that I felt like I didn't like school. Grateful for the lost and lonely times. I'm grateful for the alcohol abuse, the smoking, the divorce, the whatever, because it shaped us who I am right now. And I think a large part that's why I wanted the name Rewired Eating, because I wanted to be more than just this diet thing. And I think people, if going to come to me for another diet, I'm like, you're going to be either bitterly disappointed, but most people tend to be overwhelmingly joyed and satisfied and surprised, because they're like, oh, Ian, I thought you were just going to tell us what to eat. I'm like, no, I'm going to, you can do that on the internet. Yeah. It's Google shit.
Yeah, you can Google chat up lines as well. So I don't have any of those.
Yeah.
So if anyone's listening to this and wanting to know more about you, how you work, how can they learn more or reach out to you?
So rewiredeating.co.uk is my website. I am on all social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, and the other one, Instagram. I'm even on TikTok, Ian Bickle. There's not many Ian Bickles. There's only one famous Bickle, who was De Niro in Taxi Driver, mass murderer. So yeah, and fictional. So yeah, but yeah, I do have a free diet scorecard. So what this does is basically it helps you assess like where you are in terms of your relationship with food and body image. Generally, the people that have quite low scores on there, those are the sort of people that I typically have conversations with. You get a couple of free resources, and yeah, like that's pretty much it, I think, Alan. I mentioned the podcast, the Rewired Eating podcast. I have guests on there talking about diet culture, emotional eating. I have some solo stuff on there as well. So go have a listen, subscribe, and all of that jazz.
Excellent. Like I say, I'll put all these links down in the show notes to make it easy for everyone. So, final question, and everyone gets this one at the end. And the question is, as this podcast is called Relationship Revolutions, if there is one thing that, in your opinion, would bring a revolution or evolution to the world of dating and relationships, what would it be?
Oh, it's got to be food related, hasn't it? God, honestly, go out and experience food together. Share your desserts. Like, you know what? Like, I think food is so amazing for relationships, because it just brings you together. Don't be that guy or girl who's eating separate to that person like in front of you in the name of health. But yeah, I mean, beyond that, I would just say try and have a laugh. Like I try and make my wife. To my wife, I'm not funny now. That's how long we've been together. Like, she's crazy. I'm like, she would listen to this podcast and be like, "What a dick." But like, other people think I'm funny. But yeah, and I was like, once upon a time, you laughed at my shit jokes. But yeah, have a laugh because life is short. But yeah, that's what I'd say. I hope that's an all right answer.
There's no such thing as a wrong answer to that question. So, and it's also an answer that I've never had before. So, yeah, it's great.
Oh, well.
I love it.
Oh, beautiful.
I will just say one caveat though: when you are sharing your partner's dessert or whatever it may be, just be aware of any food allergies they have. Don't want to get sued.
Yep.
Thank you for listening. And if you haven't already, please leave me a review on your preferred podcast platform. Click the like button and also subscribe so that you get the new episode notifications. I'm curious, what did you take away from this episode? Please share your takeaways with me. Send me an email to relationship-revolutions@theloveengineer.rocks.